On our anniversary dinner, my wife leaned across the table, twirling her ring, and said, "It's just one night, Michael. One night with the man I've dreamed about since college. He's famous now. He's here in town. And this is my only chance." She said it like she was asking for an extra glass of wine, not detonating our marriage. The steak went cold, the jazz in the background kept playing, and I sat there listening to the woman I built a life with explain how sleeping with her dream man didn't really count. I didn't flip the table. I didn't shout. I decided right then I'd never argue for space in my own home again. I'd walk out and let my silence speak louder than begging ever could. Fellas, if your wife dropped that on you at your anniversary dinner, what would you do? Try to forgive it. Draw the line and walk. Drop your thoughts below, because every man's answer to that question says everything about who he really is. And because silence says more than shouting, I just listened while Laura slid her phone across the table. Screens lit my face like a police siren. There he was, Brandon Hayes. Blue check, late-night messages, heart emojis, inside jokes I'd never heard. She scrolled with the calm of someone showing vacation photos. "He remembered me from college," she said like that, made it holy. I read "Can't wait to see you after the show" and felt something small cave in. Guys my age know that feeling, the one you get when the mechanic says engine not oil change. You go still. You take stock. I stared at my untouched steak, at her ring, spinning on the linen like a coin deciding our future. Betrayal didn't arrive with a slap. It arrived with a smile and perfect grammar. She called it closure, like it was self-care. I took a breath, long enough to count to 10, and asked for the check. Not to end the night, but to start something else. That something else hit harder when she stood up, and I recognized the dress. Not just any black dress, the one from our wedding night. Same cut, same shine under soft light. You know how certain songs take you back. Clothes do that too. Suddenly, I was 20-something again, broke and in love, promising forever over takeout and dreams. Only this time, she wasn't putting it on for me. She smoothed the fabric like you'd smooth a flag before raising it and told me not to wait up. The room got brighter and colder at the same time. A waiter asked if we wanted dessert. I almost laughed. Dessert. The sweet was gone. She kissed my forehead like a kindergarten goodbye, not a marriage. She walked toward the door like she'd won a prize. I watched the dress float away and realized the past can be repurposed, just not always for you. I paid the tab, left the tip, and kept my dignity. Keeping my dignity meant driving home without calling anyone. No group chat, no brother, no lawyer. Just the city sliding by taillights and wet asphalt while the radio talked about traffic like nothing had happened. Men my age understand this part, the drive where your hands do the steering and your mind does the inventory. You count every compromise, skipped trips, late nights, swallowed words. I pulled into our block in Manhattan and watched a couple argue over parking, normal problems I suddenly missed. In the mirror, I looked like a man who'd been told the company was restructuring. Same job site, no job. I killed the engine and sat in the dark a full minute like you do before walking into a wake. When I opened the door, the hallway smelled like her perfume and lemon cleaner. Familiar, yes. Safe, no. I told myself 3 words I wish I'd learned sooner. Hold your line. Holding my line started at the front door. Everything looked the same. Photos on the wall, grocery list on the fridge, her keys in the same bowl, but meaning had moved out. The couch wasn't a couch. It was the seat where I believed a story that wasn't true. Our bedroom wasn't a bedroom. It was a museum of plans. Men will get this a home can flip on you. One minute it's a harbor, the next it's a holding cell. I stood in our closet and felt the air go thin. I remembered the first time we painted this room, how we laughed at the color we ruined, and ordered pizza on the floor. Tonight there was no laughing, just a hum from the AC, and the knowledge that trust once cracked never rings the same. I reached for the suitcase we only used for family holidays and set it on the bed. The zipper sounded like a line being drawn. That line needed more than anger. It needed action. So I did what middle-aged men do when life flips the table we make lists. Passport. Wallet. A folder with birth certificates I forgot we even had. The camera bag on the top shelf, dusty enough to write my name in it. 4 years ago, I'd hung it up because stability sounded noble. Tonight, stability sounded like a word you say when you want the other person to stay small. I found a beat-up business card I'd kept like a secret Harrison Cole Seattle architectural. He once said, "Call me when you're ready to be yourself again." I wasn't sure who that was, but I knew who I wasn't. I tossed in boots, 2 shirts that made me feel like me, and a jacket that could handle rain. New York has storms. Seattle has rain. Both clean things in different ways. Different is what I needed, so I called. It rang forever, like every second was daring me to hang up. Michael Harrison sounded half asleep and fully aware. I gave him the short version, married, broken, ready to work. He didn't ask for gossip. Good men don't. He said, "Can you be here Monday?" I said yes, because sometimes the only way to rebuild is to attach yourself to a promise before your courage fades. We talked gear day rates and a short-term apartment near the water. When we hung up, the house was quieter than before, but the quiet didn't scare me. It steadied me. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a photo from our early years, me on a rooftop at sunset, camera in hand, grin wide enough to catch wind. I slid it into the side pocket of the suitcase, not as a memory, as a map. Maps are fine, but first you clear the old route. I sat at the desk and started cutting ties that didn't serve me. I removed myself from streaming accounts, shared calendars, and the digital places where couples pretend everything's fine. I logged into the bank and moved half our joint savings into my account legal fare, hours by the numbers. Middle-aged men know that emergencies don't RSVP. You either plan or you pay. I kept it clean. No petty charges, no midnight shopping sprees, just a line item titled transition. I left the joint account funded enough to keep the lights on until Monday, which is more grace than I was given. Then I set my phone to Do Not Disturb and wrote down a single sentence and a sticky note. Silence is policy now. I stuck it to the monitor, closed the laptop, and felt the first real breath I'd taken all night. That breath carried me down the stairs, suitcase in hand, to the New York night that never asks questions. A cab slowed. I waved it on. I wanted to feel my own steps. The bodega guy on the corner nodded like always, not knowing I was walking out of a life. Men talk about the moment the second you stop trying to fix what keeps breaking. This was mine. I passed the spot where we argued about curtains, the bench, where we planned a trip. We never took the fire escape that caught our summer laughs. None of it was mine tonight. Outside, the air had that wet metal smell after rain, the kind you get before dawn. I pulled my coat tight, not because I was cold, but because I was done. When I reached the avenue, I checked flights on my phone. Seattle looked far enough to hear myself think. Thinking is easier at an airport at 3 a.m. when even LaGuardia gets humble. Coffee tastes burnt. Seats squeak. Security guards look like they've seen everything and still feel for you. I bought a one-way to Seattle and sat by a window where planes ghosted in and out of fog. I didn't text Laura, not to be cruel because I'd said everything I needed to by leaving. Guys in my bracket understand. You can't argue your way back into respect. You live your way back into it. I emailed Harrison my arrival time, set an alarm, and rested my head against the glass. The city I loved had taken my breath and given it back colder and cleaner. Over the intercom, someone announced a delay to Orlando, and 6 people groaned in unison. Life goes on. Mine would too, just not in the same house, or the same story, or the same suit of excuses. So I took off that suit digitally first. I sat at the desk and unwove the small knots that make a marriage look tidy from the outside. Shared calendars gone. Streaming profiles with cutesy nicknames removed. Couple photos pinned to cloud albums so family could heart them, archived, then deleted. I logged into the bank and moved half of our joint savings to my account. Legal cleaned the right thing by the numbers. I left enough in there to keep the lights on for a while, which is more courtesy than I got. No shopping spree, no spite. Just a line item called transition. I closed social apps where happy filters do heavy lifting, then turned off location sharing. I should have killed months ago. Men my age know this drill. You don't slam doors, you lock them and pocket the key. I didn't leave a note. Notes invite negotiations, and I was done negotiating my self-respect. I hit sign out one last time and deleted the shared album titled Us. That was a goodbye without a speech. With that goodbye sent, I needed miles. LaGuardia had seats, but no clean shot west. The red eye that mattered left from JFK. I grabbed a cab and rode through a city that always talks, even at 2 a.m. Steam stacks, breathing bridges, winking a driver who knew better than to ask. I bought a one-way to Seattle on my phone, middle seat by a window, carry-on only. D&D on. No playlists, no podcasts, just the rhythm of tires and the simple math of forward. Guys in their 40s and 50s will get this sometimes. You don't need advice, you need distance. The cab smelled like coffee and vinyl. We flew past the stadiums, past warehouses that never sleep, and slid under a sky starting to bruise. My booking confirmation buzzed quiet and certain. There it was, a straight line from the life I had to the life I could still build. I checked the time, tipped heavy, and shouldered the same bag I'd once used for vacations. Tonight, it was for leaving, not returning. At JFK, that line turned into a gate number. Security was the same old drill belt off shoes, in the tray, laptop out. I pulled my camera from the bag for the first time in years and felt the weight of it like a handshake from an old friend. I'd quit for stability, like so many men do when love asks us to be smaller than our gift. Not again. A TSA agent nodded at the gear, said, "You shoot weddings." I said, "Buildings," and he waved me through like he understood. At the benches, I did one more thing. I didn't plan. I slid my wedding ring off. I didn't toss it. I tucked it into the camera bag's side pocket with the other retired tools that once meant everything. That steel circle felt heavier than the lens. I zipped the pocket and rested my hand there for a breath, not in grief recognition. The board flicked from on time to boarding, and the crowd stood like a tide. I stood too ready to be carried. With the ring put away, the only thing left was a message I refused to send. I typed one out anyway, "We'll talk when I land," then sat there staring at the lie. We weren't going to talk. We'd been talking for years, and words had only bought extensions on problems we didn't fix. I held the phone, thought about men I know who argued their way into smaller lives, and deleted the draft. Silence isn't cruelty when it's a boundary. It's policy now. I set the phone to airplane mode before the announcement told me to slid it face down, and felt the seat thump as the cabin door sealed. That sound is its own ceremony if you let it be a hush, a final latch A before and after. The engine whined, the aisle filled with last-minute bag shoves, and I closed my eyes. Not to sleep, just to let everything sit where I put it. No note, no speech, no more asking for what should have been freely given. While that door sealed, another opened back in Manhattan Laura's. I could picture it without trying, the purse hitting the hall table, her voice rising from casual to worried in 3 rooms flat. That's when the calls started stacking. "Where are you? Call me." Then the texts, short, then long, then frantic. The phone buzzed in my pocket like a small animal that wanted out. I didn't take it off airplane mode, not because I wanted to hurt her, because I finally refused to outsource my peace to anyone else's urgency. Men in this bracket have all been there. Your boundaries are tested the hardest right after you draw them. I looked at the window reflection at a man who'd been dependable to a fault and kept my hand still. A voicemail came through before we left the gate, somehow finding a gap. I didn't press play. I deleted the entire thread instead, like yanking weeds before the roots learn your address. Deleting the thread didn't delete the ache, but it cleared the path. Somewhere over the dark Midwest, I made a rule I could keep: do the next right thing, then the next. No speeches, no revenge shopping, no late-night confessions. Just moves. My dad used to say, "Measure twice, cut once, then cut clean." He said it about plywood, but life listens. I flipped open a notebook and wrote 3 lines. Show up for work. Protect your body. Spend time like it matters. That was my whole religion for the hours between takeoff and sunrise. I didn't numb out with a movie. I watched the wing light blink us forward. The cabin murmured. A baby fussed, then settled. A guy in a suit snored like a leaf blower. I pictured Seattle rain rinsing off the noise I'd lived in. I kept breathing steady and boring. Discipline isn't dramatic. It's just honest. By the time the pilot said we were descending, I decided I'm done narrating pain. I'm building proof. So I kept it landing in Seattle to the smell of rain and jet fuel and a sky the color of a steel sink. SeaTac at dawn is all soft voices and coffee lines, and nobody needs your backstory. I grabbed black coffee and eggs at a diner where the counterwoman called me hon without looking up, which felt like mercy. I texted Harrison, "On the ground. Can meet today." He fired back a time and an address near the water, like we were picking up a conversation from yesterday. That's how good men talk, straight lines. No guilt, no gossip. I rented a modest car, not a fresh start trophy, and drove north while wipers kept time. Seattle rolled out in glass and Hills ferries ghosting through the mist like they were minding their business. I cracked the window and let the cold air slap me awake. My phone sat face down on the passenger seat, silent. Let it stay that way, I thought. Let it all be simple and sharp. Before the meeting, I needed a place that was mine. The short-term apartment was a square of blank white walls, a humming fridge, a view of a street where someone always walks a dog. Men know this ritual: Target run for towels, a pan, 2 plates, and the kind of lamp you build with an Allen wrench. I picked up a cheap table and tightened every bolt like I was earning something back. Alone isn't lonely when it's a choice. I stuck a yellow note on the fridge. Silence is policy now, and put a trash bag by the door for anything that violated it. Old habits, old excuses, old scrolls into nowhere. I took a quick shower set, 2 shirts on the chair, and caught myself standing a little taller. In the mirror, I saw a face I recognized from a younger time minus the forgivable wear. I boiled pasta, ate it from the pan, and smiled. It wasn't a feast. It was a first. The key in my pocket felt like proof. Policy is nice, but work is better. I drove to the waterfront early and watched the city wake cranes swinging slow gulls, arguing a ferry, cutting a clean line like a promise. I pulled the camera from the bag, and the grip fit my hand like it never left. Men who knew who they were before they got responsible will understand this muscle memory can be a map back home. I started with the big shapes, glass, steel sky, then chased the small truths condensation on a railing, a reflection that turned an office tower into a watercolor. The shutter clicked in a rhythm that matched my pulse, and I adjusted settings by feel, not thinking, just seeing. When I checked the LCD there, it was a frame that carried weight without trying hard. Not perfect. Honest. I took 3 more, then 10, then stopped before I got greedy. I'd forgotten this kind of hunger. It didn't hurt. It focused. For the first time in days, I smiled because I meant it. That small smile didn't stop the calls when night fell. Numbers I knew. Numbers I didn't. The kind of texts that start with, "We're worried," and end with, "Please respond." I left the phone on the counter and let the quiet do its job. Men get painted as stoic like it's a flaw, but sometimes stillness is simply choosing not to add noise to chaos. I cooked eggs again because a routine is a rope you can climb. I set tomorrow's clothes on the chair like a kid the night before school. Then I changed my voicemail to something simple. "You've reached Michael. I'm unavailable." If it's about work, email. If it's personal, "I wish you well." No drama, no door cracked. I washed the pan, set it to dry, and opened the window to let the smell of rain in. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn pulled a line through the dark. I lay down with the suitcase as a nightstand and slept before I could overthink it. I slept fast and hard, and the quiet held until morning. When I finally checked the phone, it was a wall of missed calls. Hers first, then mutual friends, then her sister. I didn't answer. I learned later how that morning went Laura opening the door purse on the table, calling my name, room to room, until calm turned into fear. She found the empty hangers, the cleared drawer, the silent office. That's when the story changed from one night to "Where are you?" Guys my age know this pivot. The moment the person who broke the rules acts shocked that there are consequences. My voicemail filled with apologies that never said the word wrong, just worried. I kept it simple. No reply. Boundaries have to be boring or you won't keep them. I made coffee in a pan because I didn't own a pot, yet ate toast straight off the counter and looked out at a gray Seattle street that didn't care who I used to be. Good. I needed a city that minded its own business. That same morning, while I learned to drink bad coffee with dignity, she filed a missing person report. I heard the details later from a friend who worked downtown. The officer asked how long I'd been gone, what happened before I left, and whether anything violent had occurred. When she said I'd taken my suitcase and some savings, he closed his notepad. "Ma'am, he left. That's not a crime." Men know this tone, the one that says the rules of the world still apply even when your feelings don't like them. She argued, she cried, she called me dramatic in the same breath she called me missing. The officer gave her a sheet with resource numbers and sent her home with the truth: nobody wants adults can walk away. That afternoon, I met Harrison at a coffee shop that smelled like cedar and ovens. He shook my hand like I mattered. "You ready to work?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and meant it. Paperwork, a start date, an address by the water, a simple plan that didn't need permission. By evening, she called the bank. I can picture the confusion. How could our account move without her approval? The manager, polite and firm, explained joint means joint. Half was mine by the book, and my signature matched. $37,000 sounds like a lot when you say it fast. It looks smaller when you spread it across rent, gear, repair, and breathing room. Men in their 40s know that money is oxygen. You don't hoard it for ego, you stack it for calm. I left enough to cover bills through the month because decency doesn't disappear just because you do. Back in Seattle, I bought a coffee maker and a cheap desk. Small upgrades that said, I'm not camping here, I'm living. I labeled a folder, work and another personal, and promised myself I'd keep them from wrestling. She texted a picture of our wedding photo with a long message I didn't read. I put the phone face down and screwed the desk legs tight. Some stability you build with a wrench. When the bank didn't fix it and the police didn't chase me, she called the circle. You know the list: college friends, neighbors, guys from the softball team, my sister in Ohio. I heard later how the questions landed. Have you seen him? Did he say anything? Did you know about a job? They hadn't. I hadn't. And I didn't tell them. Good men can hold water. One buddy sent me a single text, "You safe?" I answered with one word, yes. He replied with one word, proud. That's how men say I'm here without turning it into a campfire. Meanwhile, in my apartment, I stood a broom in the corner and pretended it was a coat rack. I ate dinner over the sink like a teenager and laughed at myself just enough to keep some joy. I set an alarm for a 6 a.m. run even though I hate running, not to get fast, just to move in a straight line. I fell asleep to rain on the window and a calm I couldn't buy back in New York. The next step was a private investigator. I respect the hustle. If I were her, I might have hired one too. He did what they do. Pulled old addresses, checked credit cards, scanned social media. He found a clean trail because I left one. No new charges, no selfies, no geotags at cute brunch places. Men in this bracket understand privacy isn't paranoia, it's maintenance. He called a few former coworkers. One told him I'd updated a portfolio and smiled more lately. That must have irked her, the idea that I could be both gone and fine. In Seattle, Harrison put a contract on the table and slid over a set of keys to a small office with big windows. Start with the lobby shoot, he said. You'll see the light around 10. I nodded like a rookie and unpacked my camera on a table that used to sell muffins. I checked batteries, wiped a lens, and felt my hand steady. The PI could chase shadows. I would chase light. Light is honest. It doesn't flatter or flatter itself. The building's lobby opened like a calm chest-stone glass steel repeating a promise. I shot early frames from the corners, then knee-high, then dead center. The security guard watched with the soft interest of a man who has seen 100 false starts and knows this one might stick. Around 10, the sun did what Harrison said it would, poured in low and clean, turning surfaces into a hymnal. I braced my elbow, exhaled, and took the frame that would end up on the client's website a week later. No fireworks. Just right. Back in New York, Laura dropped in on my old office. A colleague told me later she came in hot left small and cried in the elevator. He mentioned refreshing his portfolio, he admitted, but he seemed normal. That's the thing about men like me. We hold it together until we don't. Then we don't in a straight line. I uploaded proofs, labeled them plain, and sent the link. Forward only. When the PI ran out of rope, he nudged her back to the detective. She wanted a story with sirens. He offered paperwork and policy. Ma'am, he withdrew his portion, packed his belongings, and left voluntarily, he said. Probably the same way he'd say, please sign here. Facts can feel cruel when you want magic. He recommended a mediator or a lawyer if she wanted to talk divorce. That word must have hit like a dropped plate. In Seattle, I walked past a law office with a name that sounded like salt and decided not to step in yet. I wasn't running from the law, I was walking toward a life. Harrison reviewed my set, pointed to 3 frames, and said, these speak. That landed. Men know how rare useful praise is. We crave it like water when we've been running dry. I nodded, wrote down notes I'd pretend to forget, and booked a second shoot for the morning. Work was a room with doors, and each one open to light. By week's end, Laura's texts softened into asks. Can we talk? I just want to understand. I made a mistake. There it was, the word that mattered finally showing up after the damage. I read it once and didn't reply. Not to punish, to protect the progress. Men who've tried reconciliation too early know how it goes. You negotiate with fog, and when the sun burns it off, you're still lost. I made dinner on the tiny stove, chicken, salt, pepper, nothing fancy, and ate at the counter while the dryer rattled like a cheap ride. I wrote a note for the next morning. Arrive early, wait for the lobby to breathe, shoot less mean more. Then I pulled my ring from the camera bag and looked at it under the kitchen light. It was a circle unbroken and still not a promise. I set it back where it lives now and turned off the light. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you decide who gets through. The first check landed the following Tuesday, modest, clean earned. I held it longer than a man should hold a piece of paper, not because of the amount, but because of what it said: you are not stuck. I walked it to the bank in a drizzle that felt more like a rinse than a rain. The teller smiled without chirping and asked if I wanted to open a business account. Not yet, I told her. Let me nail a few more reps. Back on the street, a ferry moaned low like a throat clearing, and the city kept its head down. In New York, Laura texted a photo of our couch with, "We need to talk face to face." I imagined that couch like a witness that had nothing left to say. I typed, "Not now," and deleted it without sending. A friend called to say he'd run into her at the grocery store. She looked tired, he said. "Are you okay?" I told him the truth. Getting there. Getting there became a practice. Each morning, I met the building at the same time and let the light teach me its schedule. Each afternoon, I ran a slow mile by the water, building a small promise I could keep. Each evening, I cooked something with one pan and sat in the quiet on purpose. Meanwhile, on the other coast, Laura lived in a different film: police reports, in a folder, PI invoices, in an email, friends running out of advice. Our lives had become a split screen, hers full of questions, mine full of tasks. Neither one was easy, only one was useful. Men in their 50s taught me this with their eyes: you don't win by being loud, you win by being steady. I ended the week by printing 3 of my favorite shots and pinning them over the desk with tape. They weren't masterpieces, they were evidence. I turned off the lamp, cracked the window, and let the rain find its rhythm. Tomorrow, I'd show up again. That was the whole plan, and it was enough. So I showed up again and again, turned into 18-hour days before I knew it. Morning light in lobbies, afternoon edits that felt like sanding wood, evening emails that asked for clarity and got it. Men my age know this season you live like a contractor on a deadline lunch. Standing up coffee, going cold, calendar blocks stacked like lumber. I kept it simple: shoot, sort, deliver, improve. No shortcuts. My back ached. My eyes burned, but the work steadied me. I wasn't chasing applause. I was rebuilding the part of me that keeps promises. Harrison checked in without hovering. "You're stacking clean reps," he said, and that meant more than a trophy. At night, I walked the neighborhood to keep my head from buzzing, counting small wins like receipts. One client rehired, one frame went from good to honest, one bill paid without flinching. The quiet in my apartment stopped sounding empty and started sounding earned. Tomorrow, I'd do it again. That wasn't punishment. It was permission to become someone I could recognize. Recognition came slowly, and because slow works, I laced up old shoes and jogged the first mile along the water. It was ugly knees, complained lungs, argued a gull, laughed at me, but I kept moving. Men who've carried stress like a second backpack know what I mean. Your body tells the truth, your mouth avoids. I didn't chase a finish time. I chased the feeling of keeping a small promise after a day of big ones. By week's end, the mile became 2, then 3 on good mornings. I added push-ups against the kitchen counter, then on the floor when pride allowed it. The mirror didn't lie. My face thinned, my eyes cleared, and the suit of excuses started to hang loose. I slept harder because my legs demanded it. I ate cleaner because junk couldn't keep up with the schedule. I didn't post any of it. This wasn't content. This was rehab. The next weekend, a friend mentioned Mount Rainier like a dare. I circled the date not to impress anyone, but to meet myself on a hill. Meeting myself meant hills small ones first, because men my age respect joints more than bravado. I found a trail that tilted just enough to humble me and climbed it without pretending it was easy. Seattle gave me rain, and rain gave me rhythm. Up, breathe down, breathe, repeat, until the noise in my head dropped below the sound of my shoes. I started carrying a small pack water, a bar, and the stubbornness I used to waste on arguments. Photos improved surprisingly. After hill work, my eye got cleaner. I framed with less apology, waited longer for light, deleted faster when the shot was lying. The city looked sharper from higher ground, and so did I. Back at the apartment, I hung a cheap pull-up bar in the doorframe and fought it for reps I hadn't earned in years. The bar won more than I did, which was honest. Every man needs at least one thing in his house that doesn't care about his excuses. Rainier moved from dare to plan. I bought better shoes. I slept like a teenager who'd mowed 3 lawns. Sleep gave me mornings. Nights gave me school. After edits, I cracked open the basics men skip. When we're busy proving we can wing it: management, marketing, investing. No jargon, just fundamentals. Charge what the work is worth. Track the cash. Write proposals in plain English. Spend dollars where they earn their keep. I watched lectures with a notebook, pressing pause to practice pricing on fake jobs until the numbers felt like sentences, not guesses. I learned to say no without apology and yes without fear. I set up a simple system, one spreadsheet, one calendar, one inbox rule that kept distractions from looking like opportunities. The first time I adjusted a bid up instead of down and the client said, "Sounds right," I sat back and let that line sink in. You don't have to be the cheapest to be chosen, you have to be the clearest. I read about index funds and sleep about marketing funnels and not being boring about the power of showing up on time with files named like an adult. It wasn't flashy. It compounded. Compounding courage took me to Rainier on a gray Saturday that decided to be kind. Trailhead at dawn breath, fogging legs, negotiating with pride. Men in their 50s passed me with quiet smiles that said, "Keep going, every mile has a tax." I paid mine in sweat and stubborn steps. Trees opened to views that shut me up. I didn't chase a summit. I chased a standard, steady effort, no drama. Halfway up, I thought about all the easy exits I used to take. Work late instead of work out, nod along instead of psyched up, hold on instead of let go. I kept climbing. On a flat stretch, I stopped to drink and looked back at what I'd covered. Not impressive to a ranger maybe, but honest to me. I took one photo boot's trail sky hinting blue. No filter. On the descent, my knees sang protest songs and I listened without quitting. Back in the car, I sat a minute before turning the key. Rainier didn't crown me. It cleared me. I drove home heavier with good fatigue and lighter everywhere else. Everywhere else needed a name I could put on invoices without cringing. 6 months in, after a run that didn't kill me, I wrote it on a sticky note, Summit Visuals. Simple pointed, not trying too hard. I checked the domain, filed the paperwork, and opened a small business account with a debit card that didn't apologize. I designed a clean one-pager site with 3 galleries and no fluff. If the work couldn't speak copy, wouldn't save it. Harrison grinned when I showed him the logo. "It fits your gait," he said, which is the kind of compliment men remember. I ordered 50 business cards, the thick kind you don't flick away, and kept 10 in my pocket at all times. I wasn't playing dress-up as a boss. I was treating the work like something that fed more than my ego. The first time a client paid an invoice addressed to Summit Visuals, I didn't celebrate on Instagram. I paid my rent early, bought groceries that wouldn't shame a doctor, and scheduled a Saturday to do nothing but breathe and fold laundry. Laundry mattered because systems matter. I blocked Mondays for outreach, Tuesdays for shooting, Wednesdays for edits, Thursdays for delivery, Fridays for cleanup and planning. Boring is brave when you've lived in a storm. I set a rate card and stuck to it. I built a simple template for proposals and a simpler template for thank you notes that didn't sound like a robot. I learned to ask better questions. What do you need this image to accomplish? Who needs to love it? Where does it live? Those 3 answers cut my misses in half. Men in this bracket know the joy of fewer mistakes. I hired a college kid for 5 hours a week to wrangle files and back them up twice because future me deserves respect. The work got cleaner. The days got quieter. My phone stopped being a fire alarm and turned into a tool I could put down. I put on muscle I didn't brag about. I slept with a tired that earns its pillow. And on a Tuesday that felt like a Wednesday, an email arrived that changed the tone. The email was short, like good news should be a regional architecture magazine wanted to feature a set I shot downtown. Not a cover, not a career turn, just a solid yes from a voice that didn't owe me one. I said thank you once and sent the files with names that made an editor smile. When the piece went live, I didn't forward it to 100 people. I sent it to Harrison, who replied, "Keep your head down," and my buddy back east, who wrote, "Proud." Meanwhile, the calendar filled itself with the kind of work you don't dread: hotel interiors, a civic center lobby, a tech campus that needed to look like it has a soul. I walked to the printer and framed 3 clips for the office wall, not as a shrine, but as a ledger. Proof beats pep talks. That night, I ran an easy 3 and cooked steak in a pan that finally had the right weight. The rain paused at the window like it was listening. I slept early. Morning would need me. Morning needed me, and so did closure. Exactly 1 year. From the night I paid that check in New York, I prepped a FedEx envelope on a clean table. No note, no scorch. Just a petition for divorce signatures where they mattered blanks where hers would go. Men ask me why I didn't add a speech. Because speeches invite counter speeches, and I was done auditioning for my own life. I placed the ring inside a small cloth bag and tucked it into the camera drawer where honest tools live. Then I walked the envelope to the counter, paid for overnight, and stepped into a breeze that smelled like wet concrete and coffee. Somewhere, a train tugged the line again. Boundaries don't need applause. They need follow-through. Back at the office, I opened a new project folder, named it Clean, and started a shot list that didn't care about anniversaries. The confirmation email from FedEx arrived like a soft gavel. I closed it without rereading. Closure isn't loud, it's final. Final didn't mean finished, it meant focused. I returned to the day like a craftsman lights tripod, lens, cloth checklist, then the first test frame. The client walked in and said, "Do your thing, which is American, for we trust you." That trust felt like a weight and a lift at the same time. I worked slower, not lazier, aligning lines, waiting for a reflection to turn from messy to meaningful, shifting a chair 2 inches and transforming the room. Men my age understand those 2 inches. They're the difference between almost and yes. When we wrapped, I packed with the quiet satisfaction of a man who left drama in favor of delivery. Back at the apartment, I opened the fridge, poured water, and stood at the sink like it was a finish line. The envelope was somewhere over the Rockies by then. I didn't toast it. I didn't dread it. I marked the calendar for tomorrow's run and set my alarm for early light. Rebirth isn't a moment. It's a stack of days you build until they can carry you. And when those days finally carried me, they didn't lift me fast. They lifted me straight. The first sign was simple. A client forwarded my file to a friend without asking for a discount. Then a downtown firm booked me for a lobby. Then a hotel called about a full refresh. Men my age know this rhythm. One good job begets another if you show up on time and don't make excuses. A regional magazine ran a small spread clean copy. My name spelled right, nothing flashy. The emails changed tone from "can you" to "when are you free?" Every "we love the look" didn't make me cocky. It made me careful. I upgraded my tripod before I upgraded my phone priorities you can measure. At the end of month 1, I paid every bill without flinching. At the end of month 2, I put something in savings and didn't yank it back out. The stack of days became a ledger, and the part of me that used to apologize for wanting more learned a new sentence: let's do it right. Doing it right showed up in numbers, not fireworks. A steady invoice cadence replaced guesswork, and the calendar began to feel like a backbone. I built buffers into bids for the errors we pretend we won't make, and suddenly projects stopped bleeding me dry. Men in this bracket understand yes with teeth, the kind of yes that includes boundaries. I said no to a job that wanted champagne on a beer budget, then watched a better one arrive because my time wasn't clogged. Harrison noticed the change and nudged me forward. Price the value, not your insecurity. It landed. I created a simple rate sheet and stuck to it even when the room got quiet. The checks cleared faster. The bank app, once a stress test, became a confirmation screen. I didn't chase toys. I bought redundancy, extra batteries, a second body cloud backups that worked without drama. And when the work stabilized, the noise in my head took a knee. That's when life sent me something I wasn't auditioning for. It started with a seminar on sustainable materials, one of those campus talks you attend to keep your brain honest. The speaker was a geology professor with dirt under her nails and clarity in her voice. Sarah Mitchell. She explained stone like a story-age pressure time and somehow made it sound like hope. After I thanked her for treating science like English, and she laughed the kind of laugh that doesn't need an audience. Men my age will get this. I didn't pitch. I listened. She asked what I shot. I said space that holds people, and she nodded. We traded emails that didn't try too hard and coffee that didn't pretend to be a date. She asked better questions than I did. She liked ambition because she had her own, and that felt like oxygen. When I mentioned a dawn shoot, she brought a thermos and silence at the right volume. No tug of war, no on-stage performance. Just 2 adults comparing maps, seeing if our roads could run side by side without crashing. Side by side became a habit. Walks that turned into hikes. Hikes that turned into hill. Repeats that made us laugh at our knees. Sarah carried a field notebook and taught me the names of rocks I've stepped on my whole life. I showed her how light lives in a window for exactly 7 minutes and then dissolves. Men who've lived through loud love will understand the luxury of quiet fit. No scorekeeping, no stage whispers about who's winning. She never asked me to be smaller. She asked me to be specific. "What do you want this year?" she'd say. Then wait. I answered like a grown man, clean books, fewer mistakes, 3 frames I can be proud of in December. We planned weekends with pencils, not promises we couldn't keep. We cooked easy food, took turns doing the dishes, and left the TV off more often than on. My apartment stopped looking temporary. I bought a decent pan, real sheets, and a plant I haven't killed. The work held. So did we. Holding steady, opened the throttle. A boutique hotel chain booked 3 properties. A civic project needed images that felt like invitation, not intimidation, and a tech campus asked if I could make glass look warm. I could. Men my age respect a good run. We know it doesn't last forever, so we ride it clean. I built a simple prep checklist and stuck it on the door gear, access backups client name, pronounced right. I arrived early, stayed late, only when it mattered, and delivered proofs on schedule with file names a sane person could read. The bank account inched up, not viral, not lottery, just honest growth that made rent early and groceries unremarkable. I paid a small quarterly tax bill without a stomachache. On Sundays, Sarah and I folded maps over coffee and circled a new trail for the afternoon. On Mondays, I sent 3 conservative pitches and didn't refresh my inbox like a gambler. Clients began using the word trust. I wrote it on a sticky note, then earned it again the next day. Trust gets you rooms you used to peek into. A developer invited me to present at a design breakfast. 30 minutes, 10 images, 0 fluff. I told the story of 3 lobbies and the people who move through them, nurses after night shifts, janitors before sunrise, couples whispering between elevators. Men in this bracket appreciate a room that isn't a circus. I kept it short, took questions, and answered without pretending to be a guru. 2 hands went up after a law firm needed a refresh. A hospital wanted the new wing to feel like relief. I booked site visits, asked better questions, and left without overpromising. Later that week, an editor mentioned my name in a group email I wasn't on, and work I didn't pitch landed anyway. I framed the invite on my wall, not the paper, the idea it represented. You don't have to kick doors when your work holds the handle. That night, Sarah and I took a ferry, watched the city lean into dusk, and didn't talk strategy. We just let the water do its job. Water does its job. So do numbers. Month by month, the spreadsheet stopped scolding me and started nodding. Retainers showed up. Late pays dropped. I moved from, can I afford this, to should I before buying anything bigger than a lens cloth. Men who've climbed out of holes know that's the real upgrade. I paid off a card, added a modest emergency fund, then funded a weekend in the mountains without calling it escape. It was investment on us. On a cold morning near the summit trail, Sarah caught me staring at the horizon like a man about to make a call. New York, she asked, reading the look. I hadn't told her, but the rumor was circling an industry gala at the Waldorf Astoria wanted a keynote from a photographer who could talk about spaces that make people breathe easier. I shrugged because nothing's real until it's in writing. She just smiled, handed me the thermos, and said, when it comes, say yes, slow. We climbed the next section in step quiet and strong. The ask arrived on a Tuesday that started like any other checklist on the door. Coffee sunrise into glass. Subject line, Waldorf Astoria Gala keynote invitation. Short email, big room. They'd seen the magazine spread, heard about the design breakfast, and wanted a voice that wasn't selling mirrors. Men my age know the weight of a hometown stage. New York isn't just a city. It's a history. I read the email once, twice, then closed the laptop to take a walk before I answered. I didn't want to say yes from adrenaline. I wanted to say yes from alignment. On the sidewalk, a delivery guy wrestled a hand truck. A kid chased a runaway umbrella, and the rain did that Seattle thing, where it barely exists but soaks you anyway. I called Harrison. He said, "You're ready. Tell the truth, keep it clean, and wear the suit that fits your new back." I texted Sarah, "It's real." She replied, "Slow yes." I went home, opened the laptop, and typed the 2 hardest simple words, I accept. Acceptance turned into preparation. I built the keynote the way I build a shoot. Start with light, remove clutter, earn attention, 10 images, 10 lessons, no sermon. The first slide was the lobby where I learned patience. The last was a window that taught me restraint. Men in this bracket don't want slogans. We want sentences we can use Thursday morning. I practiced out loud until the words landed like they belonged to me. Sarah sat on the couch with a yellow pen and circled the places where I drifted into jargon. Say it like you'd say it to your neighbor. She'd remind me, and I would. We timed it to the minute. We cut 2 good lines to save 1 great one. I ironed the suit that fit my new back and put a fresh card in the camera because I wanted to bring something home that wasn't just a memory. The ticket to New York popped into my inbox. I printed it because paper can still steady a man. Then I slept harder than usual and dreamed in clean lines. Clean lines carried me onto the plane into a seat by the window where the world looks honest. As we climbed, I thought about a year of stacked days about how bank numbers are a lagging indicator of better choices. The skyline that once felt like judgment looked like possibility from 30,000 feet. Men my age know this redemption. It's not magic, it's maintenance. Touchdown at JFK felt familiar without the sting. I checked into a quiet hotel, hung the suit, and laid out the tie like an old friend. Then I walked past Gallagher's, the steakhouse, where the old chapter snapped shut and let the past be a landmark, not a loop. Back in the room, I called Sarah. We kept it short. "Proud of you," she said. "Proud of us," I answered, because success without a witness is just a spreadsheet. I set 2 alarms, one for morning, one for gratitude, and opened the drapes. The city glowed like a lit blueprint. Tomorrow I'd stand in a New York room and speak without flinching. The climb had brought me home. So the next morning kept its promise, and I walked into that New York room without flinching. The Waldorf ballroom breathed money and history. Gold light, white linens, a low hum of people who make decisions. I felt the old city in my chest and the new back in my suit. When they called my name, 500 chairs shifted at once and the applause came clean, not courtesy. Men my age know this moment, the one you earn with 1,000 small, boring choices. I stepped to the mic and let the room settle before I spoke. No swagger, just air and truth. I photographed spaces I started, but I work for people, nurses on night shift, cleaners before sunrise, couples waiting on good news. Slides moved when I told them to. Silence did its job. I kept it tight, zero fluff. Then I gave them the sentence that had to be said. Sometimes betrayal destroys you. Sometimes it builds you. The words didn't need music. They had weight. I felt the room lean in like a hand on my shoulder. That lean turned into a hush I could hear the kind men recognize from locker rooms and funerals, the quiet right before an honest nod. I moved through the 10 images like a carpenter. Measure, cut sand, no wasted strokes. This lobby taught me patience, I said. This window taught me restraint. The laughs were small and right where they belonged. When I closed with success isn't noise, it's proof. The applause rose like a tide and broke against the chandeliers. I thanked them once, stepped back and scanned the crowd, because your eyes always go looking for yesterday. That's when I saw a face I used to come home to. Laura. Front third left aisle, holding a glass by the stem like it could steady her. The glass slipped, cracked against the marble, and scattered under the table. A few heads turned. Mine didn't. The stage lights felt warmer. I nodded to the moderator, left the mic where it stood, and walked off in the same silence I used to beg for. Boundaries followed me like a suit that finally fit. If boundaries can walk, they walked with me down the side stairs as the program shifted to the next award. I caught breath in a service corridor that smelled like lemon and linen. The ballroom wall muted into a soft thrum. Forks applause, a voice trying to sound bigger than its mic. Men know this exhale, the one after a hard job, lands without a wobble. A coordinator touched her earpiece and told me a car was ready when I was. In a minute, I said, because I always take one. That's when I felt the old city at my back again and stepped into the edge of the lobby, letting the marble and mirrors show me a man I recognized. My phone buzzed. Harrison, clean hit. Sarah, proud of you. Call later. I typed soon and slid it away. Then the crowd spilled out like a river after a dam break, and in that current, our eyes met mine, steady, hers searching. I didn't smile. I didn't glare. I looked through her like you look through glass to check the weather. Looking through her wasn't cruelty. It was distance earned the hard way. I held that look a beat long enough to acknowledge history, short enough not to re-enter it. She mouthed my name like a test of the PA system. I let the sound die. Men my age will understand not every call deserves an answer, especially when the question was already settled. A donor clapped me on the shoulder, said something about refreshing honesty, and I thanked him because it was true. Honesty had paid my rent built. My back carried me to that stage. The moderator waved from across the room. I gave the professional nod, that means we're good. Then I moved toward the lobby with the people who had trains to catch and kids to kiss goodnight. At the revolving door, I saw headlights stutter under the canopy and felt New York's old wind thread my collar. I didn't check behind me. When you decide not to go backward, you keep your feet pointed where your life is. Feet pointed forward carried me under the awning and into the city's breath-warm, light, cool air tires on wet stone. A valet lifted a gloved hand, asked for a name, and I gave it without apology. The Tesla eased up glass, black as sleep. I thanked the kid, took the claim ticket, and stood there a second, because closure deserves its own doorway. That's when the lobby glass hissed open, and the past came out at a trot. Michael, her voice cracked on the second syllable. She was close enough to smell the kind of perfume that tries to make a promise. I squared my shoulders out of habit, not hostility. Men who've done this know the feeling, a mix of nerves and peace, like the moment before a clean cut. She reached for my sleeve and stopped herself, which told me she finally believed the sign she'd ignored. No entry. I turned just enough to make eye contact, no more. The night pressed in the way nights do when they're about to record what you say forever. Betrayal. Forever is why I kept my voice even when hers shook. Michael, I made a mistake, she said, words tumbling like someone who finally found the break too late. That sentence had been missing in action for years. It arrived without a plan. Men my age know the gravity of "I made a mistake" useful only if it comes with change, not as a spell. I let the night hold the pause and then answered the way a surgeon sets a tool down. "You did throw away the best thing that happened to you," I said, steady as a level on fresh wood. She blinked, hope and panic wrestling behind her eyes. The valet lights reflected in the marble like small constellations. A couple slid past us, laughing softly, the living proof that life keeps its appointments. I didn't lecture. I didn't edit. Silence did its job until the next line could land where it needed to. I'd saved this sentence for the moment it would matter to me, not to her. And I wasn't talking about me. I let it sit there, not cruel, just correct. You could feel the air shift the way a room changes when a truth finally takes its chair. She opened her mouth and closed it again, hands unsure of what to hold. Men who've trained themselves out of speeches know this freedom clarity that doesn't need volume. Behind her, the doorman pretended not to listen with the skill of 1,000 knights. The Tesla door clicked as the driver popped it for me, and the sound drew a clean line under the day. Laura tried one more time, something about counseling, about the old us, about missing the man I used to be. "He doesn't live here anymore," I said, and the words weren't a dagger. They were an address change. I glanced at the street, the city moving cabs arguing, a delivery guy whistling a tune nobody wrote down. Life loves momentum. I had mine. The next step would prove it. That proof arrived as the passenger door opened and Sarah stepped into the light, composed, simple black dress, the kind of presence you don't have to explain. "Ready to go?" she asked. And the question was a hand that knew where my center of gravity lives. I turned back to Laura because decency is part of the rebuild. "This is Sarah Mitchell, my business partner and fiancée." The last word landed like a stamp you apply once. "Sarah, this is Laura," I added, "someone I used to know." No spice. No victory lap, just accurate labels at the correct time. Men my age understand the value of witnesses, not to gloat, but to mark that you didn't imagine the climb. Sarah squeezed my hand, small pressure, big message forward. Laura's eyes found the ring that wasn't hers and the calm that never was. She nodded, more flinch than bow, and looked past me, finally seeing the street I'd chosen. The driver met my eye in the mirror. I answered with a nod. Time to leave well. Leaving well means getting in the car, not turning it into a new stage. I opened Sarah's door first because respect is a habit or it's nothing, then slid into my side. The cabin sealed with that soft thump that feels like a signed agreement. New York lights skated across the glass as we pulled away, and the lobby shrank into a postcard I don't have to send. Men in this bracket know the power of a quiet exit. You don't burn bridges, you outgrow them. Sarah rested her head back and exhaled. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Aligned," I said, which is better than relieved. We passed Gallagher's without slowing. I glanced at the awning, not to mourn it, but to confirm it stayed where it belongs, behind us. My phone buzzed once. I let it buzz. The city opened like a map I had time to read now. Ahead, the avenue stretched clean and patient. I took Sarah's hand not to prove a point, but to say thank you to the kind of future that waits only for action. And because the future only waits for action, here's mine. I let the past stay past. I forgave her a long time ago, but the man who needed her apology died the night she walked out of that restaurant. I don't need revenge you can hear from the street. Success isn't noise, it's proof. Peace is policy now. The ring stays in the camera bag. The sticky note on the fridge still reads, "Silence is policy." And the work keeps speaking in clean lines and paid invoices. I hold my line. I keep my word. I build days that can carry me. If you've been where I was, you know this truth. You don't get closure from a conversation. You get it from a new life lived on purpose. So I'll leave you with a straight question, fellas. If you were me, what would you have done? Would you have stayed, talked it out, or walked clean? Drop your take in the comments. No fluff, just real. And if these stories meet you where you live, hit subscribe and ring the bell. We're not chasing drama here. We're chasing clarity in the next honest day.